So here, sorry, we said it is dynamically typed. When we say something is dynamically typed, what that means is basically that you don't need to type the data type of any variable that you declare. I know that that will not really make sense to you right now, but when we get to that point, I will remind you again what a dynamically typed means. But what it basically means is that when you are declaring a variable, when you are writing your program, you don't need to declare the data type of that variable. So let me show you quickly what I mean by that. So let me open my PyCharm as well. Yeah, so right here, I will just quickly show you what I meant by dynamically type. We haven't gotten to the point of writing any code, but sometimes it makes sense to show something ahead of time so that you will have it in mind what I'm trying to say. So I'll do it right inside this hello world. So let me configure my Python interpreter to use this. So what do I mean? So we will get into a point right here. So that will be in the variables and operators. And this is where we understand deeply what dynamically type means. At this point, we mention dynamically type. So it means it does not mean that you are typing something on the keyboard. So what that means is basically in programming, whenever we declare a variable, so variable is somewhere where we can store data. So just like at home, you have a cup where you can put water, and you have a cupboard where you can put your clothes or your shoes. So the same things is what we can refer to as a variable. So let's say variable, right? Variable. So which of course we are going to talk about in session 3. So now, how do we create a variable? So the way you create a variable is, let's say, port. You have a port. So a port can be a variable. And what do you put inside our port? So let's say, for example, we put yam. So that will be your variable that stores your yam, maybe at the time when you are cooking that yam. So right here in programming, normally we say a variable is dynamically typed for Python because we did not specify what is the data type of this yam. So in the sense that the yam is a string, and this variable we have a string, as you can see, str. So I will not say str here to the variable. So this is what we meant by a variable is dynamically typed. So if I say str here, you can see that we have an error, but the str is going to be taken based on the value that you assign into that variable or that you store into that variable. If I change this variable now to a number, that will be also a number. So if I show you again, here you can see this variable is of type str. I don't have to say it ahead of time. I just have to go ahead and create that variable. Dynamically, that variable will take the type from whatever we assign to the variable. What do I mean? So if you assign 1 to this variable type will change. As you can see, this is int. I don't have to come here and say int ahead of time. No. So whatever you assign to your variable will determine the data type of that variable. So that is what we meant by dynamically typed, that Python is dynamically typed. We'll get to that point properly later, and you will understand what that means deeply. So dynamically typed basically means that a variable.
Sorry,
Yeah.
maybe at this point, maybe maybe I would understand more when we get, because I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
When you were typing in the variable, you
Hmm.
said port equals
Yeah.
to yeah.
Hmm.
Then you said it brought out is it string
Yeah.
str.
str. Yeah.
Now when you changed the yam to one,
Yeah.
it brought out in int.
Yeah.
Why is it changing?
Okay, that's a good question. The reason why it is changing will be more clearer when we get to the point of variable and operators. But the reason why it is changing is just because we have assigned a different value with a different data type. So the one we first assign, you will notice that that one has double quote around of it. So
Yeah,
if you don't remember, I can put you back there. So right here, we do port and we do double quote and we put here.
okay,
And the second one, let's say number, let's say this is also a variable, and we do that, and we did not put a double quote, we put one. So,
okay,
so here, there is no double quote, and you can see the color is different. So your name, for example, will be inside a double quote because it's a string. My name will be inside a double quote because it's a string. Anything that comes out of our mouths will be inside a double quote because it's a string. But numbers, yeah, numbers also comes out from our mouth, but you need to know that numbers is a number. You should be able to add numbers together. But if you so let's do that quickly. We will get to that point, but yeah, because you asked that question, I think it's good to show you. So if I just run this code now, I'm expecting 1 plus 1 to be 2. As you can see, I cannot do quote 1 plus quote 2 plus quote 1 here. If I do that, that will be what we refer to as string concatenation. Instead of this to be 2, then it will be something like 11. So let's see. So as you can see, so
okay,
therefore, this is a string. This is not number. That is the reason why you cannot add them together. And if you take a look at here now, you can see it producing a string, str. But if I
okay,
remove that double quote around of it, then you will see that it will produce integer, int. So
okay,
that's the reason. So anything that goes inside a double quote becomes a string. And
okay,
numbers do not go inside double quote because they are mathematical numbers and you should be able to do maths on them, just like I did just now.
okay,
So let's remove this one for now. They are not supposed to be there. We'll talk more about it as we continue. Then we have object-oriented programming, or we can say object-oriented. So what we are saying here is that Python supports object-oriented. So it supports how objects are moved around. And the reason is because for any application that we want to build, that will consist of objects, okay? And take an object as an example of what you even have at home. So your clothes is an object. Your, let's say your kitchen is an object. Your room is an object. Your sitting room is an object. All of these are connected together to make your apartment. So if any one of them is not there, you can still live inside the apartment, but you will realize that you are lacking something. And in order to make us to have a good application, there are some objects that needs to be in place for them to be able to talk to each other. And Python allow us to be able to create an object that we can, you know, uh, join together to become a very robust application. So this is why we said that Python is an object-oriented. Then easily readable. So as you already saw from the code that I even showed this morning, creating a port, putting a yam, creating a number, putting one, you can see that it's something that is very easy to read. So you won't have any difficulty reading the language or understanding the language. So this is why we said it is easily readable. Then we have the white space sensitive. So white space sensitive basically means that Python needs to be treated nicely, because if you did not treat it well, then your code will not run. What do I mean? So white space sensitive is something like this. So there's a white space here. Actually, that is a black background, but we call it white space because there is a space. So something should be written there. I'm not, a space here is not a problem at the top, but a space at the edge right here is the issue. So here, if I move this up a little bit and I do something like this, so here you can see we have a red line and everything has turned to red under the hello world because I'm inside this hello world file. And if you try to run this now, then it will give you an error. So here you can see indentation error, unexpected indent. So there's a white space here, so which is not supposed to be there. If I move that back, then everything becomes good. Python is happy and is able to run your program. So that is what we meant by white space sensitive. As you continue with your learning, that will be more clearer to you and you will understand it. Then we have extensive standard library. So it's extensive in the sense that uh, we have communities, we have developers who comes together to build amazing softwares, amazing tools that you can use out of the box. And you can use that directly from your PyCharm in order to build your own application. So this is why we said it's extensive standard library that you can take out of the box and make use of it. So basically, you don't have to reinvent a wheel. You don't have to reinvent something that has been invented. If you want to do so, you can do, but time also matters. If you have something that will allow you to continue working on your own idea, on your own application quickly, you want to take that and use it quickly rather than building everything from scratch. So we have this extensive standard library that will allow us to do so. So which means that Python also supports that. So the last one is what we call free and open source. So when we say something is free and open, it means that it is free and open. And just like you might have already noticed, we are able to download Python free of charge. We didn't pay for that. And we are also able to download PyCharm free of charge. We didn't pay for that. So this is what we meant by it is free and open source. So basically, as we continue, you will understand more about Python. Any question for the Python characteristics?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, great. So let's move on. Then we talked about we are going to talk about the common use cases of Python. So as we can see here, the first one on the list is the artificial intelligence and machine learning. And this is also possible to achieve using Python. And Python is even one of the language, is one of the best language for that. And here we can see the library that we can use in order to achieve this artificial intelligence and machine learning using Python. One of it is syskit, and the other one is PyTorch, and the other one is TensorFlow. So these are some of the library which are already built into Python that we can use out of the box to achieve creating an artificial intelligence application or creating a machine learning. And we go down to the second one, which is the web backend. So in the sense of a web backend, we are talking about building an application that can receive data and store the data into the backend of the application. So Python is something that allows us to do so. So for example, Django is a framework that Python supports. that can allow us to properly build a web backend for our web application. Then the other one is pyramid, so which is also something that Python supports to allow us to build a web backend. Then we have the Flask, the Bottle, and Paraminco. So the one we are going to be focusing learning in this course is Django. So which is something that we will learn and that will allow us to be able to build a web backend for an application that we want to build. Then we have testing. So testing is basically testing your application. So when you create an application, you want to make sure that the application is working according to specification, right? You want to make sure that the application is doing what the stakeholders expect the application to do. And that's the purpose of releasing that application. If the application is not working according to specification, or the application is going to fail when the stakeholders try to run it, you don't want to release it. And in order for you to know this, you have to test your application properly. And this is where testing comes in. So testing is the process of testing your application and making sure that the application obeys all the specifications highlighted by the stakeholders. Yeah, so right now we can see we have the, we can see that we have the library which can allow us to perform testing. And one of it is PyTest. And the other one is Robot Framework. So in this course, we are going to be looking into how to test our application, because as an IT person, testing is something that you cannot do without. So if you, let's say, for example, you have your own application, you can test it. Even someone that is not an IT person can also do testing. Testing in the sense of manual testing. So let's say we have an application that we develop as an IT person, and we want to give it to people without IT knowledge to just play with the application, maybe by registering into the application, try to use the application as they will use it in a normal daily life, for example. So Facebook, for example, is a playground where you can see or where you can test the application manually as a user. So because if you register to Facebook, if something is not working, you will know. And if you're not happy with something, you will know by the time you use it. So it means that normal people can also do testing, but those are what we call manual testing. And in here, we are going to be learning how to test using a code to test a code. So which means that we are doing not manual testing in this case. Then we go to what we call task automatization. And we have Selenium and PyAutoGuide and Request as the library that can allow us to do that. What is the point of task automatization? Basically, is the process of performing your task in an automatic way. And that is what that is basically focusing on. And we also have a DevOps. So what is that? DevOps are the guys that actually deploy your application into the cloud. And when I mention a cloud, I mean not the cloud that we look into and we see on the sky, but I'm talking about the cloud services where we can put our application, and the application will be available over the internet for anyone that wants to see it. So this is what we refer to as a cloud in the world of technology. So DevOps guys are the people that will make sure that, for example, when a Facebook is done, when the developer actually, when they are done building the Facebook application, then the DevOps will see what are the things that they have to put together to make sure that Facebook can go over to the internet. So this DevOps is not limited, this job of DevOps is not limited only to DevOps guys. This job is something that developer also can do. But these days, companies are trying to make sure the work of these developers are reduced a little bit because these guys are doing so many things like building the application, thinking about how the application will go over the internet and so on and so forth. So this kind of segregation is what the company is kind of putting into place. And this is why now we are having these DevOps guys, or we are having testers separately. But as a developer, or as an IT person, all these things should be in your pocket. You should be able to do the job of testing. You should be able to do the job of DevOps and so on and so forth. And this is something that you will learn also from this course. And we have a data science. So data science basically meant for people that will do data analytics, preparing the data. And here we can see we have pandas, which is one of the library that Python already provides that we can use for data science. And that makes your life easy. If you want to use Python for data science, you don't have to start from scratch by creating this pandas tools yourself. It's already there in Python. You just have to import it and make use of it. And we have IPython, which is also one of the library. Then we have Jupyter Notebook, which is also one of the library that we can use for data science. So basically, as someone that is learning Python right now, these are all the common use cases of Python. Very powerful, very robust, and you can use it for so many things. As I mentioned here, you can decide to be an artificial intelligence engineer. You can decide tomorrow that you want to move to web backend. You can decide that you want to be a tester. You can make your decision to be task automatization, or to be a DevOps engineer, or to be a data science engineer. So the sky is basically not something that you cannot fly above. So here we will see that it is important to understand the Python, because at the end of the day, you will have a lot of places to explore. So this is one of the power of Python. And as we can see from the common use cases, we have a good ground to work on. Any question on the common use cases of Python?
No question now.
Okay, great. So let's move on. Actually, we do used to have breaks. So because we can't sit down like this for 5 hours, just for you to be aware. So if you are tired, you can let me know so that we can take break before the normal schedule for break. So sometimes it's like 1 hour. After 1 hour of lecture, then we can take like 5 or 10 minutes break. It depends. So, but if you are tired and you feel like, okay, you want to have a break, just let me know and we can take it.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we have your first program. So your first program is what we refer to as the hello world. And that is something that you saw from the PyCharm, the first code that you saw in the PyCharm. So all the ones that we have talked about is theoretical. We didn't write any code. We looked at the common use cases. We look at the history of Python. We don't have to write any code in those places. But this is where you start writing code. And this is why we call it your first program. And your first program basically is hello world, is just about telling people or talking to the world that, hey, you are in the journey of tech, something like that. And here we mentioned about the prerequisites. And of course, you don't have to be worried about this anymore because you already have Python installed and you have PyCharm also installed. So everything is okay. And right here, this is where we start looking into what you have inside your PyCharm. So ahead of time, we have created all the folders, all the structures for the Python fundamentals for you, so that this class will be very easy for you to follow. And wherever necessary, we are going to do some exercises, and all those exercises will be placed in the right folder. So this is why we already structure everything according to what we have here in the slide. So as we can see now, point number 1 says create new folder, which contain files for Python fundamentals module. So create new folder which contains file for Python fundamental module, and open the folder in PyCharm by clicking open. This is what we have done this morning. So we have a Python fundamentals module folder, and then we open that folder in our PyCharm by clicking the open. And therefore you have the Python fundamental open, right? And point number 3, in PyCharm, inside our folder, create folder O1 hello world. So that is what we have done for you. So inside our PyCharm, inside the folder that we open, then we've created O1 hello world. So if I bring my PyCharm right now, you can see what I mean by that. So Python fundamental module, then we created a folder hello O1 hello world. Then inside our folder, we created this hello world.py. Don't worry about how to create all these things. As we continue, we understand the process of creating your files, and that will be clear to you. Point number 4, inside our folder, we create the file hello world, and this is what you can see here. Inside the file, we type print hello world, and that is what you can see right here. Point number 6, we execute the program in PyCharm by right-clicking. So you can right-click the file, or you can run the file from here. So if you're going to run the file from here, you have to make sure that the hello world is what is selected here. So that's the only way you can run the file from here. And as I can see, that is selected. So if I decide to run the file by clicking here, you can see it's running. If I decide to run the file from here, I can see it's running. So anywhere I decide to run my file, I can see my file is running out of this tube. All right. And point number 7, which is the last point, it says notice the output produced by the program in PyCharm console window that appear in the bottom area of PyCharm. And that is what you can see here. This is the output of this program that you have written, and you run this program and you can see the output right here. So that's the first thing that we have done in this course. This is the first program that we have written. Those are the steps that we follow in order to achieve this program that you can see right here. And moving on to the explanation of what we did, basically in summary. So here we can see that in the hello world program, we have printed out a simple message in the console, and that simple message is just the hello world. So very simple. We didn't do any big thing here. We just printed something out, and which means that if I even decided to do a math inside here, just like I showed you the other time, that also will print out a result for me. That will be 3. But we are not doing a math here. But what we are doing now is just to say hello world. And that's what we have here. And if I print that again, I can see my hello world. One thing you might have noticed is that inside a print function, it is always possible to make a choice. So your choice could be anything you placed inside the print function. Your choice could be basically your name. Your choice could be anything that you put here. So that's one thing that you might have noticed, and which I want you to put in mind right now already. And if I make another choice, it could be adding numbers together and not a string. A number will be an integer type. So now we said we achieved that by calling a built-in print function. So this is a built-in function. This is something that is already part of Python, and you don't have to like create that from scratch. You can just make use of it. Make use of it to do whatever you want to do by printing into the console. And here we mentioned that this function accepts a string parameter. Okay, so this is a string parameter that this function, print function, accepts inside brackets and print it out in the console. So it accepts a string parameter inside this bracket, and print it out in the console. So that was when we print out your name. So right here we can see it printed out in the console. So that's the basic explanation of what the print function is doing. And we mentioned here that we will learn about functions later. So if you still remember from the agenda, we mentioned functions is one of the things that we are going to look into. But the point is we are already using a built-in function right here. So a built-in function that we have used is a print function. So this is how a function looks like. Function is something that will take a parameter and we perform an action based on the given parameter. So the action that we have performed is to print this parameter out. And if I put numbers here, the action performed is to print the addition or the multiplication or whatever it is that we want to do, or the division. So the action will be to print the result of the result out, as we can see. So basically, a print function is a function that will always perform its job based on the choice that you make. All right, your choice is whatever you supply here. And let's take a look. For now, we said think of them. So we're talking about function in this case. Think of a function as behaviors. So print function will behave by printing. That's the behavior of the print function. It will not do more than that. The behavior is to always print something. So you need to look at a function as something that will do something. So as at home, we need to perform our own functions, our own duties. So basically, that is the function that we perform. So that will be our behavior, the things that we do. And this is the same thing here. Print function, we always do something. And that thing that we do is to always print. And we said that it's a behavior. And we mentioned that something gets done based on some input. And the input is the parameter that we supply here. So whatever that goes inside a function is what we call a parameter. So remember that. So input, whatever that goes in here will be parameter. If you put 1 here, expect 1 to be printed out as your parameter. So that will be basically by printing, we have 1. So whatever, probably, maybe this can also help you. There's a way you can share your screen if that is what you can do right now. There's a way you can put your screen like this as well. So you have my presentation, and probably you can also have your pie chart if you only have 1 screen. But with your screen, that might be very small because that's a computer screen, I mean laptop screen. But I'm using a monitor right here, so it looks bigger a little bit. Yeah, I'm just looking at every way for you to make sure that the class is kind of easy for you to follow. But the easiest one would be for you to get that monitor that we discussed. If you don't know how to do this, if you are using a window, it's very easy. You can hold the window key on your keyboard and use hold the window key at the same time, press the arrow key. So if you want it to come to the left, you press the left arrow when you are holding the Windows key. If you want the other one to come to the right, you press the window key and you press the arrow key to the right. And that will make them to be beside each other. So if that is needed, you can use it. So as I was saying, or do you need help in any case?
No, do you want me to share do you want me to split my screen into 2 now?
No, if I am not saying that you should do that, but if you think it's something that you will need, if it makes it more easy for you to follow, if you want to have your passion and at the same time see my presentation,
No,
you know.
I think for today, let me just keep following you. And like you
Okay.
said, maybe before the next class, I should be able to get
Okay,
the
great.
extra monitor ready.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so now we got to that point that we understand what a parameter is. A parameter is something that you supply inside a function. And we got to a point that we understand what a function is. And we mentioned that function is something we can refer to as behaviors, something that we always behave in a way. And a good example would be a coffee machine. So if we go right here, so we can see we have a coffee machine, which is a machine that we always prepare a coffee, just like the print function we always print out. Print function will not do any other thing than to print. Coffee machine will not serve you rice. It will always give you coffee. So that's the behavior of the coffee machine. And it will always give a coffee. It now depends on the choice that you make. So your choice will be the type of coffee that you want to drink. So if it's a coffee machine that can serve up to two coffees, then you will have to make a choice between the first and the second coffee. So which one do you want to take? And that's the same thing that the print function is going to do. So the print function will expect you to pass in your choice, which is a parameter. Your choice could be either numbers, your choice could be either string. And when you think of string, string could be anything. When you think of number, number could be any numbers. And that's the choice that you have to make. So print function, we expect you to make a choice. As coffee machine, we also expect you to make a choice. So basically, that's the behavior of those functionality. So behavior is always the same. A coffee is prepared for the user based on the coffee type choice. And the type choice is the parameter, as we already mentioned, which can change anytime user interacts with the machine. So if you take lactate today, you can take cacao tomorrow. So same thing is applicable to function. If in the function, if I print my name today, I can decide to print your name tomorrow. But the print function will still do the job of printing. It will not go away from printing, but it will now depend on the choice that I make. So that's basically function explanation. We haven't gotten to function. We will get to a function where you will write your own function and you will know how to basically create your function that will behave in a certain way, the way you want it to behave. But this is a built-in function that we talked about now, which is a print function. And it has no much difference from the function that you are going to be developing later. Okay, so both of them need to have a behavior. They need to behave in a certain way. Cool. Any question on the function?
No questions.
Okay. So now we have what we refer to as data types. What is the time? Probably you need, let's take a short break. Let's take like 5 minute break. And after that, we can continue from the data types. Is it fine?
Okay, 5 minutes. That
Yeah.
means we'll be back by what time?
So we should be back at 10:21.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, see you.
Sure.
All right. So looking into the data types. So what is it and why do we need to talk about it? So if you remember what I mentioned when I was talking about dynamically type and I was using pots as an example, let's say you store yam inside your pots that you want to cook. Let's say you want to cook the yam. Basically, yam is going to be a string as you saw previously, because that is what the port is going to be holding. And at the time when we declare or when we define the port as a variable, we did not explicitly. So notice the word explicitly. It basically means that we did not type the data type of that port. We did not say port is str, but we only say port, and we now assign YAP into port. So the str that you saw is what we refer to as the data types. So that is the type of that data, the type of the data that you store inside that variable. And when we store one, you saw that the type of the data that we store inside that variable was not string anymore, it was int. So that is what we meant by data type. So the type of data. So right here, we can see we have different data types. So that you have to familiarize yourself with. So the first one we can see here is the int, which of course you already have the knowledge of when I was explaining the usage of uh, variable in the section of dynamically type. And here we can see that we have the int, which is used for integers. So integers are the numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Then we have float. So floats are the decimal numbers. So numbers that we have dot in between them. So let's say 3.0, 3.4, 3.5. These are something that we can refer to as floats. Then we have complex. So which is something that we use for complex numbers. And complex numbers are numbers that we have numbers and alphabets. For example, we are going to take a look and you will understand what I meant by the complex number. Then we also have str and bytes. So strs and bytes are used for text sequences. And you already saw what an str looks like. So your name is going to come back as an str, my name as an str. So these are text sequences. And we have what we call the bool. And this is used for true or false values. So whether something is true or false, is the light off? It is either yes or no. Is the light on? It's going to be either yes or no. So something that is either true or false. So this is what we use that for. And the full meaning of that is what we refer to as Boolean. You will see that as we continue. So, but in short, we call it bool. And we have the non-type. The non-type is a special not defined type, and that is associated with non-value. So basically, for non-value, so they are non-type. So the most common ones that you will always see and you will always use as an IT person is one, integer, the second one, float, then the fourth one, str, then fifth, which is the Boolean, this one. And those are the most common ones that you will always see. When, as we continue, you will also notice that they are the most common ones that you cannot do without them. So those are the data types that you will understand as we move on.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't get your last. You said the ones you would use as an IT person is integer, float, and then which other ones? You said there are four.
str
Okay,
and the Boolean, this one.
okay, okay.
Yeah. So right here, we are going to look into the examples of these data types that we just mentioned. So the first one again is the int 0, 1, minus number and so on. Then the second one is the float. So 0.123. For example, 256.2. Then complex number, here we can see numbers with characters at least. So those are the complex number. If you do 1 minus 2, that is not a complex number, that is a number. But complex number, we have alphabet, at least, as you can see right here. Then we have str. So this is str, anything that goes inside a double quote. And this is what we call it test sequences. And this is also str, anything that goes inside a single quote. Either single or double, we make it a string. And bytes, which is also a test sequence, is anything that goes inside a double quote or a single quote, but has B in front of it. So we refer to that as bytes. So these and these are kind of, the same. Then we have the Boolean, so which is true or false. And we have the non-type, which is the value as none. So for now, all these might not really make any sense to you, which I understand for now, but as we continue, they will become uh, easy for you to understand and they will make sense to you as we go on. So don't worry too much if they don't really make any sense. But just remember that we have data types, and data types are something that we can get only when we assign a value to the variable. And if you still don't remember what a variable is, it's totally fine because we haven't even gotten to the section of variable. So I'm just saying this, preparing your mind ahead of time. So it's a step-by-step approach, and this is the purpose of learning. So, but for now, just remember that there is something that we call data types. And as we mentioned them here, it is something that you will continue to see. So you will never forget them because everything that we are going to be learning is built on these principles. So which means that you cannot forget them and you will always remember as we move on. So whatever we are learning now, we don't throw them away. So this is how this course is prepared. Everything is built on top of each of the things that you are learning. So as you keep moving on, you will always remember everything that we've talked about. So right here, we have printing different data types. So we already saw the data types, and we also familiarized ourselves with the data types in theory. But now in practical, we want to see how these data types, uh, uh, we want to really go into this data type by typing them into a Python. So this is what we want to look into now. So as you can see, we can print different data types exactly the same way how we printed the hello world message in our first program. So let's find out how we can achieve that. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring up my Python, and now we are no more in the section of hello world. So let's put this back as hello world. We are now in the section of data types. So which means I can close this one and I can open this one. I don't know how fast your computer is at the moment. Maybe I can wait for you a little bit. So I open my O2 data types, so you can open yours as well. Or if you want to look at what I'm doing, you can continue looking for now. So here, I'll click on the data types file. Are you also doing the same thing, or should I continue, or should I wait?
No, I'm watching what you're doing.
Okay, great. So now we have the O2 data types, and we have the .py file. So let's take a look. Everything we have in this slide is also here. Okay, so we make sure that we also have it there. So printing different data types. So that is what we are talking about right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll put this up. So the first thing we are printing is a message. So a message is something that we put inside a double quote, and that becomes a string. If you remove that double quote around of a message, you have error everywhere because that needs to be inside a quote or a double quote. So if I use just a single quote, the errors are gone. If I use double quotes, the error will also go away, as we can see. So anything that goes inside a single or a double quote becomes a string. So now we also print number, which is integer. So negative number, minus 17. Then we also print float as the dot in between. And we also print complex number. Then we also print Boolean type. Then we also print none, which is non-type. So if you run all this now, if we run all this, what we are going to get is a message minus 17, 123.4, 1 minus 2j, false, and none, as you can see. So we have all of this coming, which is coming from here. And since you remember that the job of print is to always print whatever you passed into the print, this is why you can see all this being printed into the console. So the job of a print is to print. So if I say this is my message, that is what will be printed and not a message anymore. So my message, and right here we can see that is my message. So basically, if I put this, we haven't gotten to the section of a variable, but again, this is important for me to show this quickly now. So let's say I put this inside my my variable. Let's name this variable something that will make sense. So let's call this MSG, so message, and I'll put this a message right there. So it goes inside a double or a single or a double quote or a single quote. So here we have a message. So the same thing that was here before is what we have here. If you remember the section when I was explaining the usage of variable, even when we haven't gotten to that point. So that was at the point when I was talking about dynamically type. I mentioned about ports and I mentioned about YAM. So we put YAM inside a port, and it means that that port is holding our YAM. So now we put a message inside this variable. It means that what this variable is holding now is a message. So if I put this variable here now, what I'm expecting to be printed here is also going to be my message. Let's change this to a message so that you can see changes. So we put a message now inside this variable, and I want to print the value inside that variable. So that's the job of a variable. A variable will store something for you, and if you need that thing, you can request for that thing via the variable, through the variable. So let's say, for example, you ask your kids to get you water, and they put the water inside a cup, and they put the cup inside, on the top of the table in front of you. If you need to take that water, you have to take that cup. So that's the same thing we are talking about here. So now we put a message inside a message inside this variable. If we need this message, we need to take this variable. And this is the variable. And if we take the variable and put it in the print function, we are expecting a message to be printed also. So here we go. We have that a message. Otherwise, you can just say you print directly without putting that inside a variable. And that is what we did previously. So we print that directly. And if we print that directly also, we have a message, right? So you can print your message directly, which is going to be the case of someone that will go to the stream and put his mouth or dip his or her mouth inside the stream and drink water, for example, without bothering to put that water inside a variable. So maybe that's the case here, for example. But if you don't want to go to the stream, you want to put your water inside a cup, then you can create a variable, then put that water here. So let's say water. let's say cup here. For example, my variable is a cup, and I put that water, and if I need that water, I just need to request for that variable. And that also will do the same job, water. Otherwise, if I don't
Okay,
want to, yeah,
sorry. I have a question at this
yeah,
point.
please go ahead.
If I know when you were explaining, you said
Hmm.
something about the print.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't have print, if like I said, if I don't put print before the variable, or like you said, um, like number three now, you said print, um, open brackets with the quotation water and close brackets. Then when you run it, it will give you water
Yeah.
in the console.
Hmm.
But now, if I don't want it here and in the number three, and let's go back to number two, I say cup equals to um, water with the double quotation mark, and I run it, will it still give me water?
If you don't put the cup inside here and you put
Yes.
water here, of course, if you do that, so this is it right here.
No, no, like the second one, the second part, number two, where it said
Okay.
cup equals to water.
Okay. So should you want me
If
to put a cup here?
no, 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 if you don't put it in the third,
Ah, no, of course it will not do anything.
it won't. Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
that's the job of the print. So print
So
is expecting something you see.
there must be print before
Yes.
the okay.
Yeah. So you need to print it out in order to see. So that's the behavior of the print. So that was the coffee machine example that I was making. So if you did not request for a coffee machine will not throw you a coffee,
Okay,
right? So if you did
okay,
not ask the print function to print, it will never print.
okay. And the second question,
Hmm.
I noticed when we did Hello World, there
Yeah.
was an exclamation mark after the
Hmm.
word.
Yeah.
Then when you said print a message,
Hmm.
there was a full stop at the
Okay.
message.
Yeah.
Now, the one in front of me now, what is my type,
Hmm.
has a
Question
question mark.
mark. Hmm.
So if we don't put these things, will it
Yeah.
still run?
Of course.
Okay,
Basically, those are just statements. So whichever way you prefer to write your English. So what is my type? It's like a question, right? And this is why we put a question mark. So water, I don't know. So water, possibly we don't want to put a full stop, but if you put a full stop, a comma, whatever you put will also be printed. So right here, you can see that. Whatever you put will also be printed. If you put an exclamation mark, as you mentioned, also here, you still get it,
okay.
right? Good questions. Any other one?
No, 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 no.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm happy that you are following, and these are good questions that I will want someone to ask. So that shows that you are understanding what I'm saying. And yeah, so right here you can see I was trying to lay an emphasis on this because I want you to grab it. So if you put something into the cup and you request for your cup, what you put inside is what is going to be printed. It will not print cup. It will print what is located inside that cup. And that is what you can see here. So that's what I'm trying to say. And now that we got into that point that we understand that, so it means that all these also can be placed inside a variable if we want. And that is if you want. So we can say this is a number and we can say minus 17, for example, and then you request your number here and not just that number directly. And let's change this to 18 so that we can see changes down here. So if I run this now, I should be expecting 18, water, 18. These still keep coming because they are not changed. Okay, so what's the point? We haven't got into variable. So I explain ahead of time because that's the next thing we have to talk about. And we already noticed that it is time to talk about variable when we started doing this, and this is why variable is the next thing to discuss. So we have created variables here, store the values that we are not storing inside anywhere before. And one of the importance of storing values or storing data somewhere is because you want to make sure that you have an access to that data anytime you need it. So if you do not store your data properly, if you need it tomorrow, you won't know where to find it. So it's very important for us to store things in the right place. And that is why variable comes next. Because by working with data, we need to make sure that those data are stored in the places where we are going to have an access to them whenever we want to use them. So if you ask your kids to get you, let's say, um, your wallet, if you ask them to get you your wallet, if they do not know where you are putting your wallet, they won't know where to get it. Or for example, you yourself, if you want to get something, if you do not know where you put it, you won't know where to get it. So variable is something like something that allows us to have an organized environment whereby we can say tomorrow, I need my water, and then you can go to your cup and get the water from there. Something like that. So we will talk more better about variable as we move on. But for now, let's go to the slide and take a look at what we have next. So here we print out the different data types, a message, number, float, Boolean, and non-type. So do you have any question for this?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next part. So the next part is basically exercise. And let's take a look at this exercise. And from there, we can make a conclusion if we actually understand what we talked about data types. So we have 3 points here. So the first one is that in PyCharm, we need to create a folder O2 data types. So that folder has been created for us. So basically, we are good to go. We don't have to recreate it. So O2 data type is already here. Second, inside our folder, create file data types exercise o1.py. That is where we get started from. So we need to create our file because that file is missing here. And it is missing because it's an exercise that we have to do in the class. Regarding the examples, we can find all the examples inside these folders. The third point, print out each data type in the console. Print out each data type in the console. So that will be, in order to do this, so please take a look at what I'm going to do. I will move this up a little bit. And let's maybe expand it also. So here we have all this here, which of course we can remove and put them the way they were before, but we can also leave them. So it's not a big deal. I'm talking about removing them because we haven't gotten to the section of variable, but yeah, we can leave them as well for now. So right now we are talking about these O2 data types. So in order to create a file inside a folder, all what you need to do is to make sure that you are in the right folder. So in the right folder, you get to know whether you are in the right folder by this color. So you can see the blue color is what is highlighted here. If I select another folder, you can see my blue color has moved down. And here you can see that. So you can see that. So the folder we are talking about now is O2. I'll come to that folder, click on it. So let's say this folder is closed. So I come to it, I click on it, and I can see that blue line. So this is my right folder. And all I need to do now is to right click on that folder. So I click on that, right click on it, then we can see new. So I'll go to new, and to the right, I need the Python file because we are talking about .py, and that is a Python file. And what I'm going to do here is I'll select this Python file by clicking on it. So when I clicked on that, it looks like I didn't click it nicely and it opened and disappeared immediately. So I will do it again. So come here, you choose the O2 data type, right click, new, Python file. Here we go. We click on that Python file, and this is it here. So now it's asking you to supply a name that you want to use for the Python file. And the question says create file, data types. So I will supply data dash types dash exercise dash O1. And if I want, I can put the .py, but there's no point because I'm creating a Python file that will be created automatically for me. And here we can see data types exercise o1.py has been created, and it opens up immediately after it was created, as we can see right here. And this is where we need to do whatever it is that this exercise asks us to do now. And the exercise at point number 3, it says print out each data type in the console. Each data type is something that we already discussed in the data types intro, but we just want you to do it by putting your hand into writing some code. So which, of course, I will first do for you, and we let you do it again yourself. So print. So for example, I'll print your name, for example, here. So I didn't put that in a variable. I put it directly into the print function. So print. So let's say we need number. So let's just print 1. So that is integer. Print. So let's say we need a float. So that will be 23.5. That is a float. So print. I want to print a Boolean. So whether something is true or false. So let's say I want to print true. Okay. I want to print true here. And what is that true? What is true here? So if I print true, it's fine. But let's say 3 is greater than 1. The result will be true. So it means that I'm printing true. So that's a Boolean in that sense. And I want to print non-type. So here, I'll just print none. So right here, you can see, and a good question probably would be, why is this not inside a double quote? The reason why this is not inside a double quote is because this is a key word that you have to that is already assigned into Python. Okay, so something that it's meant for a type. So if you put it in a keyword, it's fine. In a double quote, it's fine, but that will be referred to as string. It will not be a non anymore. It will not be a non-type anymore. And you can see the color is different. And this is why this is not raising an error. If I put Messi right here, Messi is not known to Python, it will raise an error. So you can see that. So you need to put that inside a double quote. We will get to a point where we will explain the things that are already known to Python, and you can also use them out of the box. I think that will be the next thing we have to discuss. So if I run this exercise, here we go. So here we have your name, we have 1, we have 23.5, we have 3 is greater than 1, that is true. So this is what we meant by true or false. So if I put this to be true, that will be true. So I can use true directly there, and that still will be printing true. If I need false here, I can also say false and print out false, and that will be false here. And what is false? So I was printing 3 is greater than 1. So let's say 1 is greater than 3. That will be false. So that's the opposite direction. And here we can see that. So basically, you can supply true or false. So this is what we meant. So let's use true here, for example. And these are the data types that we discussed, for example. And I think one that we are missing is the complex number. So let's print the complex number. So 1 minus 3g, for example. And here we go. So that will be a complex number. How do I know that these things are totally correct? I said this is a string. I said this is a number. I said this is a float. I said this is a complex. This is Boolean. This is non-type. How am I sure? How can I find out if what I know is known to computer to be true? How can I find out if what I'm saying is correct? And that will let us get to another thing that we have to discuss next. And that is what we refer to as the type of data type. What do I mean? So if I want to find out if what I'm saying is totally correct about your name being a string, I can request it. I can find out. So what is the type of Messi, for example? If I run this, that will not show me anything because we need to agree with me that for us to see anything here, that's the job of a print function. Type function is to request for the type of something. The type of this now is known to the type function. The type function is to, the print function is to print it out so that we can see. So again, print, open and close, open the brackets and close the brackets. So the job of print is always taking something inside of it and print it out. So let's print now and probably we'll see something. So here we go. Type of Messi is str, as we mentioned. So this is known to computer, and computer is able to like, verify that what we said is true. So let's do the same for type of, what is the type of one? I know that that is integer, but is it known to the computer? Is it true what I'm saying? Let's find out. Type of one is what? So this is a question now. Type one. So we are saying, what is the type of one? And in order to find out in the console, we need to print it out. So again, print, and we probably see now the type is integer, as I mentioned. So let's jump to this one. And what is going to be the type of 1 minus 3? And if I run it, it will not return me any type because the print function has not taken charge. We need to use print. So you need to request for the print to do that job for you. Print type of whatever it is that you put here. So that goes as a parameter inside the print function. And here you can see that is a complex number, as we mentioned. So what is the type of this one? So type of, again, I know that the type is bool. And if I do here what I was doing previously, let's find out if that will return true or false. 3, 1, type of 3 greater than 1. And we need to print it out in order to see. Print, open the brackets and close the brackets. So it means that everything here is what we want the print function to print the result out for us. And if I run that, here we go. That is true. So it means that if I put my true also here, the type will be still the same, as we can see here. So the non-type. So what is the type of non? Type, none, then print the result, print, open, brackets, close, brackets. Let's run it, non-type. So here we go. So we can see that everything that we mentioned here is totally known to a computer, is totally known as true. And we have that knowledge now that anything that goes inside a string, inside a double quote or a single quote is a string. And anything that goes inside, anything that is a number is an integer. Anything that is a float, I think we did not print that float. Anything with a dot is a float. So I'll just put that number here, 23.5. And the next one is complex. The next one is Boolean. In short, we refer to it as bool. And we have non-type for none. So that's the next thing we are going to look into. But as you can see, I quickly show that here based on the exercise that we have here. So talking about data type, we know what is data type now. But the question is this known to the computer? Yes, it is. And can we request the type of whatever it is that we type? Yes, we can do that using the type function. And that is what we have done here. So which means that, again, if I decided to put Messi inside a variable called name, so because name is Messi, and if I put name here, so let's say Messi 01, just for us to see some changes right here. And now you will notice that when I was requesting for type, I copy it many times. I put Messi here, and I also put Messi here. That is what we can refer to as repeating code. We are repeating something many times. So that's one of the problems that the variable comes to solve. Rather than doing that, we can just put the name here now. We created a name just one time. We put this value inside, and we can use it in many places. Rather than putting Messi 01 here and putting Messi 01 here, so which is a copy and paste. But basically, we put Messi 01 in one store, in one storage, and we take that storage everywhere we need to refer to that Messi 01. So let's check now the type of name, which I'm expecting it to be this one, and that will still be string. So Messi 01, the type is TSTR, as you can see. So variable makes sense, and we are going to look into it in the next section. Any question for now?
No question.
Are you clear?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's move on. If you are not typing this, I can also send it to you in the Slack, so you can look into that. Let me share with you. So that will be, I'll just share that with you, and that will be exercise. So data type. Go to data types. Yeah, I hope you understand what I meant. So O2 data types is the folder, and data type exercise 01.py is the file that you need to
Okay.
create. And inside that place, you can put that code or you
Okay.
can type it here. So that's the exercise. This is actually the exercise. So this, I prepare your mind ahead of time based on what we can see here. So just to recap, whatever that we put here is also what we put here. So why won't we just create it in one place like this and just request for that name anytime we want to check something? So that make more sense. That make us more organized. So you wouldn't want to, for example, put your pot inside your kitchen and at the same time put it inside your room. So you probably have a storage in the kitchen where you put that pot. And anytime you need that pot, you will go to that storage. And that is what we are doing here. So we'll go to the storage where we already put this name and we request for that name every time. And that is giving us the name by printing the name directly. And we are not printing name directly here. We are printing the type of the name. So this is why you can see type is wrapped around of that name. But here we did not wrap type. around this name. We just print the name directly. But type is doing a job here by requesting for the type of this name. And after that, we use print to print the type and bring it out. So basically, it means that I can do a variable, my type. My type is, so let's say type of name. I can do something like this, as you already might have noticed already. So let's say my name type. So this is my name type is what I'm requesting for. Whatever it is that the type returns will be stored here also. And I can put this my name type into also here. So the whole idea is all about variables, where we store things, how we store things, and how we request for the data, and so on and so forth. So if I do that also, we still get the same result. So here we go. We still get the same result because the type is returning something. So that thing has been returned to here, and that has been stored here. So whatever this return now will be something like str, something like that. So it means that str has been stored here. So if str is stored here, we say that, hey, print my name type here. So that's it. Or if you don't want to store it, it's the same as copying Messi here or copying this type in here directly. So I hope that is actually clear. Don't worry, we are still going to get to that section that we still talk more about type. But is this one clear now? This one?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. So we answer this question and we move on to the next one. So which is checking data types. So I just introduce you to that quickly. And what is it all about? So it's all about finding out what is the underlying data type of your data that you store. So that's all about checking type. You're checking the type of your data. That's it. So if you store a number, is it truly storing a number or is it storing an integer? So this is what you want to find out. And that's what we did. So in Python, we said everything is an object. So everything is an object. Have that in mind. So everything is an object. A string is an object. Integer is an object. Float is an object. Whatever it is that we do in Python is all an object. We get to that point. And this is why we will be learning about object-oriented programming later. So it's one of the things that we have in the agenda. So we look into object-oriented programming, why and how is Python, how everything in Python becomes an object. But for now, even if you forget about that, it's totally fine. So we look into that deeply as we move on. For now, think of an object as a box that contains something inside of it. So maybe you can think of an object as your jewelry box, where you put your jewelries and so on and so forth. In Python, we are able to check of what particular data types an object is. If that doesn't make sense, let me relax a little bit and read it for you again. In Python, we are able to check of what particular data type an object is. And that is what we just did. So as I mentioned to you, everything is an object. So a string is an object, number is an object, float is an object. So we have checked the data type of all these objects. So we generalize them to be an object. So what is the data type of an integer? We know. What is the data type of the other object that we have there? We know by checking it, right? So everything which is an object, we can check the data type of those objects. And this is what we did here. So for example, this is an object, this is an object, this is an object, this is an object, This is an object. This is an object. Generically, all of them are objects. But in terms of being specific, by checking the data type, this is going to be object of string object. This is going to be int object. This is going to be float object. This is going to be complex object. This is a Boolean object, and this is a non-type object. And that's what a type function allows us to do by checking the underlying type of an object. So in Python, we are able to check of what particular data type an object is. To do so, we can use a built-in function. And that built-in function is just like a print function, type, open and close bracket. The only exception is that type will not print something into the console. So if you request the type of any object, you need to use print to print it to the console for you to see. So that is why the first thing that we learn is print. It's very powerful. It makes sure that we're able to see things that is known to the computer by computer populating it outside for us to see with our naked eyes. So something that is very powerful that we can't do without. And that is why the first thing we learn is a print function. And after that, we are looking into a type function now, which basically allow us to see the type of the object that we are working with. So right here, we can see the type function accepts the object as parameter. So what is my type is an object of a string, as I can see here, because I already know. But if you don't know, if you ask the type will tell you that it's a string. And that is what we have done here. So let's say we don't know the type of this guy, and we ask the type function, and we put it inside a variable here, my name type. So I'm asking for my name type, and my name type is returned back here as whatever it is. And I need to print it out for me to see whatever it is. And that is what we did here. If you want to make it short, you can just copy this my type, and put it here. So that makes it short and faster, and you forget about this. And that was what we did, yeah? But just going deeper into how things work, that is why I again put it outside and then put it here. So that's it. So type, what is my type? And that will return a string. So we've gotten to the point of checking data type, which of course we already did somehow. But yeah, we are going to look into it again quickly. And after that, we can take a short break to rest a little bit. The type function returns a text value string. A text value string. So what do we mean by that? The type function, so this type function, we always return a text value. This is the value that the type function is returning, text value. We mention is a text value because all the value that is returned is put inside a double quote, a single quote. You can see them. So it's returning a text value. But as we can see, this is a type of bool. This is complex, this is float. But every time it returns them, it put them inside a text and return them. So that describes the data type of the function's parameter. That describes the data type of the function's parameter. So this is a function parameter name. So it basically requesting like what is the data type of this name. That is what the type function is doing. And as we can see, the name is this. This is what we store inside the name. So we are requesting the data type of this one. And therefore, it will now return the data type by printing it out. And this is what we saw right here, for example. Then it prints it out into the console. We pass return results to the print. So again, in order to see the result that is being returned, you need to pass it inside a print function as a parameter. So this is what we are doing here, checking data type and printing it. So we check the data type, and we print it out. Because if you do not use print, it will never be printed out into the console. The job of a print function is always to print. The job of a coffee machine is always to print. It doesn't matter how the coffee machine parameter is prepared. It doesn't matter the organization that prepared the coffee machine. I mean, not the coffee machine, that prepares the coffee that you supply inside the coffee machine. Whatever organization that prepares the coffee that you put inside the coffee machine is unknown to the coffee machine. The job of the coffee machine is to take that coffee and always prepare that coffee for you so that you can drink the coffee. So the same thing is happening here. So print function do not care whatever it is that you supply. In as much that you are supplying that thing without error, it will always print the value for you. And this is what you can see here now. We put another function inside the print function, and it's still able to print the result out for us. And this is what is happening. Maybe you have any question?
I don't.
Am I
I
too
don't have
fast?
questions.
Or
No, no,
should
no.
I
I'm
slow down?
following. If I'm not following, I would obviously stop you.
Okay, cool. So we are done with the checking data type as we already have something put in place. But let me pull this up a little bit. And let's move down. And I think checking the data type is something that we also put right here, checking the data type and printing it. But of course, I quickly also mention that here. So what is my type? We be printing right here, str, as you can see, because that is str. Float is this one, and boolean is this one. So basically, the same thing that we just mentioned. If I want to check for cup, what is my type for cup? And that will be putting cup here. And since cup is storing water, I'm expecting that to be also still str. So let's run this code and see what happens. So here we can see we still have str. So if we change this cup to be 1, so let's say we put €1 inside our cup. The expectation would be this will change to an integer and this will change to 1. So let's see, 1, and this has changed to an integer, as you can see, because cup now holds number and not a string anymore. But normally our cup will hold something like water. So let's put it back. So here you can see I changed this in one place and that will affect everywhere, right? Because whatever we put in cup will reflect in all these places where we are using the cup. And here again is affecting everywhere. So that's the power of a variable. Great. So now we understand how to check the data type of our data, and we understand how to print out whatever we want to print. We are making progress. So now what we have to do next is to look at the exercise, but maybe before we do that, we can take a short break if you think you need, but if we don't feel like going for a break, we can continue. What do you think?
I think let's take a short break.
Yeah, so let's take a short break. Uh,
Like how many minutes?
5 minutes again is okay.
Okay, that means we'll be back by what time?
So around same time, 11:22.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
see you.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome back. Here we have an exercise. I think is the next thing that we have to look into. And we only have just 2 points here. So the first thing is that inside our same folder, right? That's the O2 data types because we are still talking about data types right now. So this is why we are still right there. So inside this folder, we need to create another file, data type exercise o2.py. then we need to print out type of each data type in the console. So I will let you do this exercise. Basically, it's the same thing that I have done here, but I want you to create the file, so which is data type exercise 02. So if you still remember, you need to make sure that you are on this folder, O2 data types, right click and go to new. Then you have to select Python file, and data types, exercise, O2, enter, and that will give us .py. So right here, you need to do print out type of each data type in the console. So is that exercise clear?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Let me
Okay,
try.
great. Yeah, please do that. And if you have any question, let me know. I'll be here.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to look into the exercise that we can see on the screen right now. And I think that is what you already did. So um, print out type of each data type in the console. And it's basically referring us back to what we also did somewhere. I think we didn't actually do it, but I kind of did it before we got to that point. So I think you also got it correctly, which is fine. So probably we can move this one now, which I have here. I can move it to here into exercise 02. And if I move that, you will notice that there is an error.
Sorry, are you sharing your screen?
Oh yeah, no, I am not sharing. Sorry.
I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, that's true. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Good. Yeah, so what can you see at the moment?
Um, it's the data type exercise.
Okay, yeah. So the data type exercise is, we did something here in exercise 1. In exercise 2, it was empty for me. It was empty for me. And I asked you to do the exercise, and which of course you did correctly. So what I'm doing now is I went back to my exercise 1 right here. And my exercise 1 was talking about checking the data type only, but I also check the type, which is something that we needed to do at exercise 2. So I will move that to my exercise 2, which of course you did correctly. And while moving that, we notice that this leads to an error. And the reason is because the name is not defined. It was defined in a different file here. But since we have moved that into another file, that is not obvious into this file. So we need to define this name here also, if we want to use it. And that's it. So the error is gone now. So for you to be able to use a variable, that variable must be defined. So if we don't have a cup at all, we cannot use that cup. That's just it. So if a child is not given a name, we cannot call the child by that name. So that's it. So this name is not defined. So we need to define it before we can use it. So by defining it, immediately you can see the error is gone. But there's an error here because we define a variable, we haven't assigned anything. So we need to assign something, and that will go away. So if you don't assign anything into this variable, for example, you can make it an empty string, and therefore the variable will be printing empty. So if I print a name, then that will be empty, right? Because I didn't define a name. So here you can see that there's no name printed. But if I now put a name here, then you will see that there will be a name right here. Yeah. So if you don't want to give anything, you make it an empty string and nothing is printed. Or if you make it with a name, something is printed. Yeah, so the exercise is not about this. I just quickly show you that it is possible to make sure that you don't have anything put inside the double quotes. But the exercise is about this one, and you have gotten it correctly. So, which is totally fine. So we can make this to be here if you want, and remove this one, this line. So that one is also clear. So great. We can move on from here. So these are the data types. These are the types of data that we have gotten here. str is a name. Int is 1. So if you want to put that also in a variable, you know how to do that already. And it means that number will be here. And also, we can do the same for floats. So let's call it my float. And that will be 235, put here. And my float can go into my type here. And also this one can be my complex. So that will be a complex number. My complex, whatever we create. So now I use my complex, but I haven't defined it. You can see we have an error. So the name must be defined, my complex. I think this makes sense, yeah? So if a child is born, we have to give a name to that child. So the same here, before we can start calling that child our name. So that's what we are doing here. So we give a name to this child, and we are now calling that, basically, we can say. And here, that will be my role. And let's define that. So that's a variable. We will get into that next. And that will be, let's put true here. And that error will go away. And the next one, which is the last one, is this one. So that is my non-type. Yeah, I know I can do it this way or vice versa. My non-type. You might have noticed that for each variable that I'm defining, I'm kind of putting an underscore. We'll get into that later, the reason why I'm doing that. I can do without it. I can do without it, but it's basically not a proper naming convention. As you can see, it has this green underline. So if you have a combined word in Python, it's expected to put underscore, something like that. And that makes more sense. So you can read separately my and this one. If I don't put that underscore, they are kind of attached together. It's kind of maybe not easy for me to see quickly, but without underscore, I can see that they are separate words. So this is my, and this is the other word. So that's the point. But you can do without it. It's not going to lead to an error, but this is just a good naming convention that you have to adopt. And wherever we don't have a combined word, you can see there's no underscore. I just have name, number, without any underscore. If I want to do number 1, I can put an underscore. So that will be number 1. Easy for me to see. Number 1. Storing 1. Number 1. So here, if I want to be specific, I can maybe say this is only Messi name, and that will be Messi name. So whatever you call your variable, you have to refer to it. And right here, my non-type. So I'll do my underscore non underscore type. Then here we'll be having none. And that's it. So all this now we keep them in a variable before we kind of put them directly inside here. So whichever way you do them, you are going to get your result. But the point is we are going to see the importance of variable as we move on to the next point. So if I run this now, exercise 2, we are still going to get the same results, no changes. So we just kept them in a variable and we use that variable since we know that whatever we keep in a variable is stored in that variable. And if you refer to your variable name, what you are referring to is what you store in that variable. And that's what you can see. So great. So I will also ship this down to you so that you can maybe have an access to them if you want to go through them later. And this is data type, which of course you did. Data type. That's a size. o2.py. Let's say class solution. And I'll put it here. Okay. So for me, I started using a variable, which of course you can probably ignore because we talked about variable here. But yeah, so just to keep your mind ready for what you are going to expect next. Variable. So let's move on. This is it here. Variables and operators. So you kind of like have an insight of what a variable is because I tried to make sure I attached everything together just to keep you ready and keep you going as we continue with the lecture. So now, as we can see, variable is something that seems to be very important in our life, not only in programming. So just like I mentioned to you, where we live, we have to keep things safe. So you need to remember where you put your keys, for example. If you want to go outside, you have to take that key and quickly lock your door. If you don't keep it safe somewhere, if you don't have a specific place where you put that key,
Hello.
then yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you were not audible enough. It's like it's just fluctuating. I don't know why.
Oh, sorry. How about now?
Yeah, yeah.
Probably. Yeah. So I was talking about variables. Yeah. And I said that, let's take, for example, if you have to go out, you need to know where you put the keys for the door in order for you to be able to open the door or to close the door. If you don't keep this key safe, then you have to like look around, waste your time before you can find that key, before you can go to where you want to go to. And you might even get there late. So that's one of the reason and the importance of variable is to make sure that we store our data safe, keep it safe so that if we need it tomorrow, we know where to get it from. And I think that is what you can already suspect here from the changes that I made here. So if you put a value here, it's fine. But if you put it in a variable, you can use the variable many times, right? So if I want to go print what is my Messi name, I can just put Messi name here. And because I know that I'm looking for Messi, so Messi name is stored inside this variable. And that's it. And that will just print that for me quickly, right? And here we go. So we have Messi here. So if I do not put that in a variable, I'll probably have to copy Messi again and put it here. So which is kind of redundant, right? So we are repeating ourselves many times. So we have to do this and put it here. So there's no point to do that, right? And this is why variable comes in. So there's no point to do this for me to keep repeating. So that means if we are going to do something like this now, it means that this is not in existence. And here we can see Messi is kind of repeated twice. Why can't we just put that Messi inside one place, inside one bucket, or inside one variable, or inside one store, and refer to that store or the storage anytime we need it? And that will remove this redundancy of writing Messi two times. And we can just write Messi one time, store it somewhere, and just put the variable everywhere whenever we want to use Messi name. So that's what variable comes to do. And here we mentioned that variables are used to store data, right? And we said that think of variables as buses that contain something. So that something is value. So variable is something that contains something. And if you take a look at the example that I give, Messi is stored inside here. So actually we are done with this data type. So let's move into the variable section. So right here, this is variable section right here. So look at the example that we have here. 10 is stored inside a variable we call number. So we said variable are used to store data. So this is a variable. This is the data we store inside this variable. And I notice you have been calling this equal to. This is not actually equal to in programming. This is assignment operator. When we get to that point, I didn't correct you immediately because that is mathematical knowledge that we have. So this is equal to, which is fine. But when we get to that point, I will let you know this is not equal to. And I think we are already getting to the point. So this is a variable, and we call that variable number, and we store value inside that variable. So the only way we are able to store value is because we assign that value. And this is why we refer to this as assignment operator. And this is why we are talking about variables and operators together, because you cannot do a variable without using an operator. So if you have a variable, it means that along the line, you need to have an operator. And this is an assignment operator that will allow you to store value inside that variable. So now we mentioned that stored value is what defines variable data type. So the value that you store inside a variable will determine the type of that variable. And here you can see the type of this variable is integer because of the value that we store inside that variable. So if I happen to store my 1, or let's say I store 10 as a string, then the value now is going to be a string. As you can see, the type now is a string because I store 10 as a string, which is not an integer anymore. So this is why we said whatever value that you store inside your variable determines the data type of that variable. And you already know how we check for data types of any variable. We discussed about that using type function. So that should also be very clear to you. So whatever you store inside your variable determines the type of the variable. Yeah. And this is what we are talking about here.
Okay, one minute, please.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just thinking,
Okay.
usually like you said, usually I say numbers equal to
Mm-hmm.
10.
Mm-hmm.
So will it be appropriate for me to say number assigned 10? Or
No,
if I have to read that, how do I read it out?
you have to read it from the front, I will say. So 10 is assigned into the number variable.
Okay,
10
okay,
is assigned into the numbers variable. So that's the way you read that. So
okay,
at that time, it's fine when you mention that number is equal to 10. Yeah, that is fine. But now the way you read it is 10 is assigned inside number, because that is what we store inside number. We store 10 inside number. We store water inside cup, something like that. Yeah. We can't say cup is equal to water. So that's the same thing as is happening here. So what we store is what we mentioned. So 10 is assigned into number. So that means number is storing 10. So that's the way we read that. And if you remember the point of dynamically type, so again, here is it. Python is dynamically typed language. So which means that whatever you store inside your variable determines the type of that variable. So if we store a floating number here, the type of this variable will be float, as you can see, float. So whatever you put here determines the type of this variable. So since we store just 10, that is an integer, and we can see that here. And we can also confirm using our type function that we used previously. So Python is dynamically typed language, so we don't have to define variable type when declaring it. So you don't have to do int number. No, you don't have to do that. So whatever it is here, we determine what type will be given to this variable. So therefore, this is not needed. So this is what we meant by it is dynamically typed. So whatever it is assigned will be dynamically given as a type of that variable. So, sorry. So once we declare the variable by giving it a name, we also have to assign a value to it. So this is it. We declare a variable by giving a name. Then we also have to assign a value to that variable. So assignment is from here to the variable. And here we go. Variable name declaration. This is how you define a variable number. Assignment into the variable. 10 is assigned. So 10 is assigned to that variable. And we call that variable value assignment. So this is the value that we assign into the variable. And here you can see that. So this is what we have done here. So if I print this now, that basically will return me 10 because that's the 10 we assign into that variable. If I make it float, and that also will be returned because that's what we assign into that variable. So that should be clear because I try to make sure that I put it into context as we continue from the data type section. So variable is something that should be very clear now. Do you have a question?
I don't.
Okay. So if you have, let me know. So we are good to go to the next page. So we have rules for the variable. So there are 3 points here that we will discuss. So the first one is that you can change variable's value by assigning a new value to it. So you can change variable value by assigning a new value to it. So I will show you what that means. Point number 2, variable name can only consist of A to Z. So that's lower letter, uppercase A to Z also, and 0 to 9, and underscore symbols. So the underscore symbol is something that you should have noticed also when I was talking about putting an underscore in between names or variable. So variable can consist of underscore. So let's change that. So let's call this my number 10. So as you can see, this is not an underscore, therefore it leads to an error because variables, according to the rules, it can only take an underscore, not this dash. So if I put an underscore, everything will be fine. Therefore, I need to refer to the correct name of the variable. And this is an error now because we are using something that we haven't defined. So for a child to be able to be called his or her name, that child must be given a name to. So we have given a name as number 10, then we need to call number 10 for that to be correct. And that's it. So if I run that, that is fine. So the point is you can give a variable name to be anything you want. So it's your choice. You made a choice as you wish. But the point is you have to make a good choice when you are naming your data. And the reason is because naming is very important. Just like in the normal life, whatever the name that you give to your children sometimes it can have some meaning in their life. So which is the same thing which is applicable here. So if I do not name this correctly, um, if I name this dot and I put dot here, the point is this a dot? This is not a dot. So if I have a long line of code here, I might get confused what is inside my dot. But if I put it number, I know that, okay, definitely there's a number stored in that variable. And I can look it up, okay, truly it is number. But this is dot. If I come back tomorrow and I look at this and I see that 10 is stored here, I'll be disappointed. Why is it 10? I'm expecting a dot, not 10. So this is why it's important to name your things correctly. So whatever you are doing, based on that, you determine what is the name that you give. So number is what we call this because number is what we assign. So we saw that it is possible to use an underscore. It is not possible to use a dash for a variable. Now, let's take a look at the numbers here. It is possible to use numbers for a variable, just like I did. Number 10, if I want, without underscore, number 10, it is possible. But I cannot do 10 number. This is not correct. I can't do that. 10 number. You can see it leads to an error. 10 number is not possible. So it means that whenever you are starting to define your variable, the variable must start with a letter, not number. So letter, N, either lower letter or uppercase letter, but the good naming convention, which has been adopted by the community, is should always start with a lowercase letter. So if you start this with uppercase, nobody will arrest you and it will not stop your program from running. But the point is we have name in convention, good naming convention. So which means that N should be considered to be lower letter when you're starting to type your variable. But you can decide to use uppercase. No big deal. But if you go into the world of programming, if you look anything over the internet, you will see that a lot of people will do lower letter like this. So take note of that. And also you cannot start a variable with number. A number can be in between. If you want, you can put it in between. The point is it will never start from the beginning. And it can also go to the end like this, as you already saw, with an underscore or without an underscore. That will be fine. So that's the second rule for the variable. And here, variable cannot start with a number. So we also mentioned that you can't start a variable with a number. So as you continue, by the time you are defining your variable, anytime you encounter an error, try to remember the rules. And if you do not remember the rules, just change your variable. It will come to you as you continue learning. It's not a big deal. So basically, remember that you should always start with lower letter. It makes more sense. So starting with uppercase letter is like, hey, it looks a little bit scary, even by the time you look at the variable declaration. But everything is kind of inline. As you can see here, it's kind of inline. No letter is bigger than any other letter. So I think that is one of the things that you have to take note. So here, no letter is bigger, but now it's bigger here. So if I make this N, lower letter, then everything seems to be smooth. No one is bigger than anyone. So that's the point. So your variable name, lower letters, could consist of number, but cannot start with a number, can have an underscore, but cannot have a dash. So that's the rules. And you can make a choice of the variable based on what you are doing. So whatever you want to call your variable is up to you. And now we move on to the next page. So right here. So as you can see, since variable stores some value, you will agree with me that it also represents the value. And that's what we have noticed. So if you store 10 inside the variable number, so it means that variable number represents 10 because that is what we store inside. So that's what we are saying here. So if you store water inside your cup, it means that your cup represents that water. Because by the time you request for water and someone passes you a cup, what you get from it is water, if the water is stored there. And this is what we are saying here. We can use this fact to use variable as functions parameter. So that's the fact. Since we know that whatever that we store inside the variable is what the variable will represent. That is why whenever you print number, what you get there is what the variable represents. And what the variable represents is number 10. And that is why 10 is printed out. And that is what we have been doing. And you saw that we also got our points right here. And we also did in some places here, even before we got to the variable section right here. So whatever you store inside a variable is what the variable will represent. That is why if you put a name here inside your parameter function, you are able to get that name right here. This is the right one. As you can see. So that's what we meant by whatever we store inside a variable is what a variable represents. So if you store 1 in the variable represents 1. If you store your name in the variable represents your name. So whatever it is that you store there is what the variable represents. And that's what we mean here. So now we have a point here. So the hash character that you can see here instructs Python to ignore everything after it and is used for adding comments in code. What do we mean by that? So if I go back to the variable section, this is something that we type here just for us to give a meaning to what we are doing here. We say we declare, so this is the declaration. We say we assign a variable, we declare and assign a variable. So we declare and assign something to a variable. Assign a value. So let's make it more clear. A value to a variable. Yeah. So we declare declaration and assign a value to a variable. Assign this value to a variable. Right? So that's what we did here. And that's the comment that we make right here. So we make that comment right here. And if I remove this now, that will lead to an error because this is not a proper way of writing program. But since we want to remember what we are doing, so if you want to have a comment along what you are doing, you need to use the hashtag. So the hash sign that was highlighted. So in front, you just press shift key, and hash is located on my keyboard number 3. On my keyboard, on your keyboard, the position might be different, but you have to press shift and the number 3 keyboard where you have the hash. And that we give a comment. And when we give a comment, you can see it turns gray. So this will not be interpreted by PyCharm. This is what we mean. So this is not being interpreted by PyCharm. This will only remain as a comment just for you to remember what has been done here. And also the same is happening here. We make a comment here just to know what we are doing here. We said this prints out 10 in the console. And that is what happened whenever we run this code. That is what it's going to do. So that is a comment just for you to remember what is happening in each line of your code. So if I remove that hash, this will lead to an error because my PyCharm is not expecting to see a code written like this. But if you want to make it a comment, then you have to make sure that you make it a comment so that PyCharm will not interpret it. And if you go back to where we started today, I was talking about interpreted. So you can see that here. So your Python is going to interpret that code, and you have to make sure you type that code in a way that Python can interpret. So having a comment within your code is not something that Python can interpret. Therefore, you have to make it a comment by using the hash. So if you do not do that, then it will lead to an error. So that's what the hash is all about. So this character instructs Python to ignore everything after it. Everything that we can see here will be ignored and is used for adding comments into your code. Any question?
No question yet.
Are you clear? You're tired?
No, I'm not tired.
Okay.
I think we'll have
So
like maybe a few minutes more.
yeah, we have a few minutes.
Yeah,
We stop at 2.
it's okay.
Yeah. So let's move on. And this is another exercise. So you can see exercise is where you put your hand into writing code yourself in the class. And many times we're going to do it together, not going to be only you. So let's take a look here. So we have 6 points. So first one says that in PyCharm, we need to create folder or three variables and operators. So if I look into my PyCharm, I think that is something that we should already have. All three variables and operators, as you can see. So we need to create that, which has been created here for us. Inside our folder, create file, variable exercise.py. So this is where we start working from. Again, I'll close the data types. We are done with that. So all three variables and operator is where we are. So that has been selected by clicking on it correctly. And I can see it's highlighted in blue. And what I want to do now is to right click. So I right clicked on that and I go to new, then I'll go to Python file. So Python file again, then we type the name, variables. We are under the variable section and we want to look into the exercise. So exercise.py. And that has been added. And you can see that file is placed correctly inside its correct folder because we are under variables now. And once we are done with that, we move to another place. So, but we are still talking about variable and we have created a variable exercise.py here. And inside this variable exercise.py, we need to create variables for each data type. So that's the next thing we want to do. We need to create variable for each data type. And how do we do that? So take a look. So the first data type is a string. So let's call it my string because I know I'll call it like that. And I'll put it as your name again because your name is a string. Then let's call it my number is my second variable. Now let's call it 2, for example. Let's call it my float. So that's what I call my variable. And my float will be 23.7. Let's call this my complex. That is what I call it for now. Tomorrow it can change based on what I'm doing. I can call it whatever it is that I want to call it. So I call this my complex, and that will be 1 minus. And let's call this my my boolean. And that will be, let's say, 10 greater than 2, which is true. That will return true. So that is a boolean. And let's call this my non-type. Or yeah, non-type. And here will be none. So these are my variables. This is what this exercise is saying. Create variable for each data type. So variable for each data type. And this. Then assign new values of different types to a 16 variable. So print out these guys. So if we want to print them out, so print my string. Print my number. Yeah. Print my float. One thing we notice is that whenever a variable is defined, it becomes available to PyCharm. So here you can see that my complex, my float. So what I want to print now, I think is my float. I'll take that, my float, print. So let's start typing my, and here it will suggest. So my floats, then I think that will be my complex, after my float, my Boolean, print my, I'll just type Boolean. There we go. Then last one is print my non-type. And now we run it. And all of them are here. Messy, 2, 23.7, 1 minus 4j, true, none. And here we can see all of them are there. We define them into a variable, and since whatever we put inside a variable is what the variable represents, therefore we are able to print them out because the variable already represents Messi, because we store Messi inside here. And the same thing goes to the rest of them. Yeah, so that is what we already know, which is fine. Now, 5, assign new values of different types to existing variables. So a variable that is already existing, we're going to assign new value to it. So now you have a variable which you call Messi here. If I take that variable, my string, and I assign my name to it. So one thing you will notice is that my name will be what we should see now. So what does that mean? It means that we override what we initially saw inside that variable, and we add a new value to that variable. So it means that will kick out whatever that is initially here. So that kicks out whatever that we have here. And this is a problem that collection will solve later. Collection is something that will not kick out the initial value, but rather it will allow us to have many collections. So Tolu can be also here. And the collection will allow us to have, if again we want to add another value, it will just put a comma and it will add a name. So maybe Yemi can also be a name. So collection is something that is very important at home. So whenever you buy a food, you don't want to throw away what is initially in the storage, but you want to add more into your storage. So that's the problem that collection will solve for us. But as of now, we can see that variable kicks out whatever initially stored in the variable whenever we need a new one. So variable is something that can only store a single item. So take note of that. It will only store a single item. It is not a collection. And let's do the same for my number according to the question. So now I will assign 3 here. My number. So one thing you will notice again is that that number will be kicked out and 3 will be here. So you can see that 3, my number has been kicked out, 2, then 3 is now the new value. And the same thing can goes for all this one because they are just variable, and variable can only take a single item. Okay. Any question up to this point?
No question, please.
Are you clear?
Yes.
Okay.
When
So,
maybe when I do it on my own.
yeah, please go ahead and do it on your own right now. There's no point to rush. So I can wait for you. We have 30, more than 28, 27 minutes.
Okay. All right.
So try and do it, yeah.